Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another session of Exploration Tech. My name is Jared Heckman. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at Brilliance, and I'm really excited to be talking about leveraging Azure for digital commerce with Drew Douglas today. I'm going to pass it to Lori McDonald to introduce herself.
Yes, hello. I am also excited about this conversation today. A little bit about my background. I started my career at NASA Johnson Space Center, where I worked originally through an internship from when I was studying computer electrical engineering at Purdue. I ended up meeting my husband there. He also was, we were both flight controllers at NASA, and he eventually had a job with Rockwell Automation that brought us to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So I ended up in Milwaukee in 1998 trying to figure out what could be as cool as space, and I decided to start a web development company. From my husband's experience at Rockwell and my technical background over the years, we developed a niche in working with manufacturers and distributors, helping them implement digital commerce solutions. And we've grown as a team. We're excited to be on the Inc. 5000 list this year. And as a part of that growth journey, we're really excited to have Drew Douglas on our team. He's been with Brilliance for a number of years and lead developer on our team. And really excited about this conversation today as we talk about how to leverage Azure as a part of digital commerce. So Drew, I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Lori. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about Azure too. My name's Drew Douglas. Like you said, I'm the lead developer for Brilliance, and I've been working in B2B commerce for about 5 years, in web development for about 8, and with computers for a long time. So it's great to talk about cloud computing and how we can use it for making great stuff for our users.
All right, let's jump into the topic at hand here. And it almost feels a little bit silly even asking this since we're in this world, but I think it's beneficial for many people to start at this point. Drew, when we say cloud, what do we mean when we're talking about the cloud?
Yeah, so we're talking about sharing other people's computers, basically. There's a long history of doing this in computing, in that we want to leverage the power of computers. We want to use them to do useful stuff, but all this power is expensive. So basically, by pooling resources, we can make things happen in a safe, constrained way. Previously, if you wanted high bandwidth for a computer system, you wanted a high availability, you wanted to serve some sort of application to your users, like shopping carts. What you would do was you would buy a slot in a data center, and you would either send them your own machine, or you would rent your machine from them, and they would plug it in, and you would log into that machine and install your operating system and install your shopping cart software, install your database. You would keep it patched up. You would do a bunch of work to make sure that it was ready to go, and then it would be available to your users. And the innovation that's come with cloud computing is really, it's no longer your machine. It's not even your operating system usually. You are buying some resources. You're buying a CPU and some memory and some storage, and you're using those components. For example, a runtime. So we use the .NET runtime from Microsoft. You use those to write your application, and you don't have to worry about all this maintenance and patching and hardware and those sorts of failures. So it's bringing a lot of resources together in a powerful way for you to write software.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you think about what's happened over since the time I've been in web development, the difference in the work that IT teams need to do, which I know we'll get into as we dig into this, but really the cloud has enabled organizations to have to worry about less things. How does utilizing the cloud differ from like an on-premise solution?
Yeah, so I mean, with on-premise, like I said, you'd be working on your own hardware. You'd have a hard drive you had to worry about failing, and now that's your cloud provider's problem, the hard drive failing. You only need to worry about the fact that you're buying enough bits from the hardware provider so that you can store all the data that you need to. So you don't get direct access to the machine. You need to. It's all mediated by the cloud provider's tools. So you need to work and understand with your cloud provider's tools. You don't need to worry about all those the physical aspects of it. And then you also get scalability. You get the idea that if you need more resources, if you need more CPUs, if you need more storage, your cloud provider is going to be able to give them to you and give them to you quickly and on demand. So you don't pay for what you don't need.
Yeah. And that's like a powerful value proposition, right? That you don't need to worry about buying things until you need it, and that you don't have to be the one in charge of maintaining that hardware and that network to ensure that it's going to be available to people. Yeah, I know for many teams, especially when we're working with mid-market manufacturers, small and mid-market manufacturers and distributors, they usually have a limited team in terms of the number of resources they have, the number of people they have to be maintaining these systems, and so to have less things to have to worry about is really key.
Yeah, and people can, those people who are there can really focus on doing the application work, delivering the services to your users that you need to, making sure your users are happy, and not making sure that your computer is happy, or your on-prem computer is happy.
Yeah, definitely. So it really reduces their total cost of ownership in the long term, and enables them to focus on the things that are really going to matter organizationally, be unique for their business.
What is Azure and what can it be used for?
Sure. So Azure, there's a lot in Azure. Azure is a vast array of services from, like the stuff we've been talking about, just like, storage, computer, memory, those basic building blocks, all the way up to a lot of different services. So things that would allow you to provide login services and identity services. Security policies that let you control who has access to resources internally and externally. So there's triggers, there's ways of running computer programs based on events that happen from users or from other computer systems, from mail services, just a vast array. There are AI analysis tools you can buy with Azure, cognitive search. There's just a vast array. If there's something that you want to do, Azure probably has a way for you to do it. Yeah, there's a lot.
And that's one of the things I think is so fascinating, is that there's just so much there. Like when we think about what's the potential for organizations to leverage Azure, like in our conversation today, we clearly won't cover it all, and so it's really an opportunity for organizations to think about like what things they're trying to do and what potential tools are out there to help them with it. So.
Yeah, there are so many opportunities, and those opportunities then hopefully turn into solvable challenges that we developers can, find those tools and use them to put them to work to solve those problems that you have.
Tell us about Azure functions and how they can be useful to digital commerce specifically.
Yeah, so Azure functions are really a simplified way of running specific code that you want to write. So it's simple, and it's based on what people talk about as the serverless model. So you don't have to worry about, virtual machines. You don't have to worry about servers, things going up, things going down. All you're paying for is your code running somewhere in the cloud. And the way we use that in digital commerce can be a lot of different ways. Some things are like data processes. So you've got data in an external provider that you're getting, maybe a list of products, or you've got a list of customers in your Salesforce cloud, and you want to get that into your store to provide accounts to users. So taking a batch of data and transforming that from one system to another is a great use case for functions. Another use case would be listening to and reacting to data changes in your own e-commerce application. So a user adds something to a cart, and you want to record that event and use it in a different system. You can use webhooks from your e-commerce platform to call out to Azure functions, and then the Azure function can say, hey, I see this new data, I need to send it to another provider. And then, or maybe someone checks out and they want to get shipping notifications. So you have that in another external system. You want to send that back to your e-commerce system, notify the user. You can do that with Azure Functions. So there's a lot of use cases for e-commerce.
What do you see as convenient about working with Azure Functions, and what challenges exist?
So the convenient part is not having to worry about the operating system, obviously, not having to worry about uptime. They make it really easy to deploy your code into production. And that's something we as developers always want to do, is get the code that we're working on into production as quickly as possible. Get it in front of users so that users can give us feedback. And if we are messing things up, we can hopefully fix those quickly and get back on the good path. Azure, what else makes it convenient? If you need additional resources, like I talked about before, getting those additional resources provisioned and up is really easy to do. New storage, a new database, new analysis services. Some of the challenges, though, I mean, we were just talking about all the services that Azure provides, and it really is a big breadth of offering, not just for Azure, but for all the cloud services. And so there's always something new to learn. They're improving services, adding new features all the time. So it's just a lot to keep up with in terms of what the offerings are and how to best use them in an efficient manner. And then there are some constraints in order to avoid like a runaway job where you'd be using up more resources than you actually needed. They shut down your function after 10 minutes of use, unless you know what you're doing and want to reserve more space. Then you can do that in more time. But it can take some time to. You need to figure out a way to manage the amount of data that you're trying to push through at one time so that it fits within those resource constraints. And you really want to do what you can to control costs and monitor things.
Yeah, and so, well, on that note, so how much, how much do Azure Functions cost, or how much does it cost to work with those tools?
So getting started in learning can be really cheap. They give you a free account for a month, and you can use up to $200 in Azure funding money for a month. And after that, as long as your jobs are small, you can pay just a couple dollars a month to work. As you get more and more data, and maybe hopefully you get more and more users, and you're actually leveraging the systems to increase your own revenue, things can get much more expensive. You can get up to thousands of dollars a month pretty easily if you have a really large platform. But there's gradations in there, and like I said, the great thing is you only pay for what you use in the system.
Yeah, so it's really interesting from the perspective of having it as an option that potentially doesn't cost a lot for that service itself. And then it's a matter of like weighing the trade-offs with, obviously there are other integration platforms that exist out on the market, and understanding what is the best fit for an organization. But certainly to look at the potential capabilities that exist there to have your data integrated and in a way that is low cost to maintain is really interesting.
Yeah, and again, like the real benefit is focusing on your application and the core things that you need to do, and not having to worry about a lot of the infrastructure and setup and maintenance.
Yeah, I think about many years back, we had a company that we worked with that we were building an integration with, and we had to build a software application that was like a client application they had to install in their network for to support the integration, and it was a lot of work to maintain that, and and there were just a lot of pieces. It was very slow to deploy changes. And right now, one of the things that really helps organizations to grow and to innovate is to be able to be agile and introduce new changes quickly. So it's really great to have these kind of capabilities available.
Yeah, the tooling has come so far, especially in the last few years, and yeah, Azure has just advanced in terms of reliability and ease of use, especially in the last few years.
We were talking about Azure functions. You referenced the term webhooks. Can you elaborate on webhooks a little bit?
Yeah, sorry. So webhooks, it would basically just be like, so you use your browser to go to a website and make a call, and the browser, the server responds with some HTML, and your browser displays it. In a webhook, it's sort of the same web call, but it's from one server to another, and it just says, hey, something interesting happened. You should come check this out. So the idea would be that whatever e-commerce application you're using knows that something happens, a user takes an action, and you want to respond to that in some way. So you listen for this event, and then you can ask more questions if your e-commerce software to follow up and say, hey, what was the price that the user purchased this at, or which user in fact was it, and yada, yada, yada. So it lets you react to changes within an internal system externally.
Great,
And
thank you.
we work with different e-commerce platforms, and I think BigCommerce, it uses webhook. It makes webhooks available for us to use as a part of data integrations. Did I have that right, Drew?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's one of the big benefits of BigCommerce is their API integration. They have a pretty complete and still developing API that lets you look at a lot of the data within BigCommerce. So BigCommerce is a software as a service platform. So you don't get to program how BigCommerce works like you do with some other e-commerce solutions, especially websites that we've worked on in the past. But what you can do is use these webhooks to listen to changes, and then you can use the API to make modifications to your data within BigCommerce. To do things like, add new users, update users' email addresses, change your price list, give customers discounts when they do something special. So it just provides a lot of ways of looking at your data, but it does so in a really constrained way that keeps BigCommerce high performance and highly available, and all the other things that you look for in a software as a service package.
You referenced Episerver and BigCommerce, both digital commerce applications that we work with. So we, as you just said as well, we leverage Azure in different ways for each of these platforms. Can you tell us how Azure helps us with Episerver projects?
Yeah, so Episerver was really an early adopter of the cloud model and Azure services. So they've had an offering that's called the Digital Experience Platform for a number of years now that runs in the cloud. And the benefit it offers to people running an e-commerce site or a CMS site is that you only pay for the request. So again, it's that model of you don't pay for what you don't use. But they also provide a lot of maintenance services and deployment services around it, ways of backing up and moving your content around, ways of versioning your software. So these are all running on Azure Web Apps with Azure SQL databases backing them up. And they give you tools that are also running on Azure that allow you to do some of the self-service things that you need to do. So Episerver has a lot of white glove services where they'll take your code and put it right into production for you. But then they also let you do things like back up your data, migrate it between your test environment and your production environment, get it out yourself. And they give you a lot of monitoring tools too. So one of the great services from Azure is application insights. It lets you see things like performance, errors and exceptions in your code. It really helps you troubleshoot applications that you deploy to the cloud. And Episerver provides application insights and other monitoring tools so that you can see how your Episerver application is running in the cloud.
Yeah,
Really cool.
I'm thankful for Episerver's investment with Azure in the sense that, and they're continually working on how to make it easier both for developers and to better serve their customers in terms of improving the performance and providing better tools. And I know they work really closely with Microsoft to continue to innovate in that. I know we already talked a bit about using Azure with BigCommerce and Webhooks, but I'm curious if other aspects of how we leverage Azure, and specifically like thinking about how we work with like large data sets or other ways that we might leverage Azure with BigCommerce.
Yeah, so specifically, like if you have an external catalog source that you want to get into BigCommerce, like I said, you can use their API to do this. And Azure Functions in the cloud just make a really convenient web place to host this data transfer code, where you're picking data, catalog data up from one place, maybe modifying it, tailoring it to your exact needs for your site, and then injecting that data into BigCommerce. So for example, in some instances, we have like a Netly job that goes and looks for all the new data, turns it into data we actually want to import into BigCommerce, adds specific pricing and other rules, visibility rules, availability rules for inventory and things like that, and then updates the data within BigCommerce. The problem can be if you have a lot of data, it takes a long time for you to call these web services. And one of the benefits of Azure Functions is you get a lot of parallelism. So you write your code once, but then you can run it on a bunch of different servers at once. And so you can increase your throughput to the BigCommerce API by running all these functions at the same time. And it really speeds things up, especially for batch jobs that involve a lot of data like this. So there's the big data changes. There's webhooks where we're listening to changes and orders, and then taking the data out of BigCommerce and sticking it into an ERP system so that orders can be fulfilled. And then when that order is fulfilled, we'll again use the BigCommerce API to put the shipping notification back into BigCommerce and send out an email to the customer saying, hey, this is when your package is going to arrive.
That's great.
Yeah, like I said, it provides a lot of power and flexibility and really lets us focus on delivering the features we want to for the customers.
So do you have tips, Drew, for developers out there that are working in Azure?
Yeah, like I said, one of the things that we as developers want to do is get our code in front of users as quickly as possible and get it in front of production data, using production data as quickly as possible. Azure makes that really easy to do with function deployments and GitHub integrations now. So GitHub is a software code repository platform where it allows developers to collaborate and work on code together. Microsoft purchased GitHub and has increased the integrations with Azure. So that makes it really easy for developers to collaborate and get their code into Azure production environments early on. So the earlier you can do that, the earlier you can get feedback from users, the earlier you can test with production data, the sooner you'll know the software that you're developing is on the right path. So number one, get to production as soon as possible. It's easy to do. Number two is, I would say, read the docs. Microsoft has a lot of documentation out there about this vast array of services that they're providing. They're updating things, they're changing things, they're improving things on a regular basis. So don't just read blog posts from a couple years ago. Keep watching the updated docs from Microsoft so you can leverage those new features correctly. And make your solutions more performant, cheaper, more scalable. Specifically, working with working with Azure Functions, you get charged based on the number of executions you do, and then how long that execution runs and how much memory it's using. So anything you can do to make your programs more efficient and use less memory is good. There are a lot of things in .NET that allow you to make your memory small. Reacting to changes with things like the async and await library is really important for keeping your memory small. Not loading a lot of things into memory at the same time, but more reacting to data changes. In keeping with that, like I said, the Application Insights tool gives you a lot of insight into how your code is behaving, how frequently it's failing, whether it's using more resources than you anticipated it would. Leverage those monitoring tools to really see what's happening with your code. The other thing I would say is, keep it simple. One of the great things about Azure Functions is it allows you to do a lot with just a little bit of code, and the less code, the better. So if you keep it simple and keep it small, it'll be easier to understand what your code is doing when you don't have direct access to it. And it's just a general principle we try and follow in software development in general, is to just keep it simple.
Are there other things that you think of in terms of like helping developers who are starting with Azure development, or maybe they've been doing it for a while, but your best practices?
When you're planning out your data schemas, you really want to plan for the types of analysis that you want to do up front. So earlier on in the cloud era, there were a lot of, in order to get really high performance and really high availability, they gave you really simple tools to store your data in. And while those can be are really cheap to use and easy to use, the kinds of insight you get into them is it's a little more obscure. So you want to plan out what data how you want to analyze your data early on. You want to know what types of questions you want to ask your data, and use a system that is going to allow you to answer those. So before, a lot of times we just stored our data in SQL Server. So it's a relational database that's really, once you have the model down, it's easy to use. In cloud platforms, that relational data gets very expensive to retrieve. And so people have moved to more of a document database idea, where you have a key, which is maybe just the name of your data, and then you have the data itself at the other end of that. Getting a look at all of your data at once in a system like that is very difficult. So just plan for the ways that you want to analyze your data upfront.
Yeah, it's such a good reminder that like everything is better off when you have a vision of where you're trying to get to, and like what things are going to be important later, so that you can ensure that the way you're approaching the development and the technology is architected in the right way to support that in the long term. So it's great advice.
As always, Drew, you have excellent advice. Is there anything that you want to share before we end the session today?
I just really appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. It's really interesting learning about all the continually changing environment in Azure, and so it's just great to talk to you guys about it and talk about how we can best help our customers.
I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you again, Drew, for taking time out of your very busy schedule to support us in this series, and have a great day.
You too, Sharon. Thanks a lot, Laurie.
Thanks.